Round the World Lit Audio. Kokoro by Natsume Soseki. Part 2 Finale and Part 3. Sensei's Testament. Full narration script. Channel intro. Welcome to Around the World Lit Audio, the greatest novels ever written, from every corner of the world, in English. New chapter every week, free to listen. Chapter recap. In week 6, the narrator's father improved briefly in November, enough for real conversations between a father and son who had never been particularly close. A letter arrived from Shizu, Sensei's wife, saying without quite saying it, "Come." The narrator wrote to Sensei. No reply. His father collapsed again in December. The narrator sat through the nights beside him. January came. His father was still living. The narrator was still there. This is the final episode of Part 2 and the beginning of Part 3. Part 2 Finale. His father died in late January. He died in the morning, early, before the household had fully woken, in the specific quiet of a house that has been waiting for something for a long time, and has finally arrived at it. His mother was beside him. The narrator came when she called. He stood at the bedside and looked at his father, and felt the specific quality of grief that arrives when a loss you have been preparing for finally happens, and turns out to be, despite all the preparation, a surprise. The preparation does not protect you. It simply means you have been carrying the weight of it for longer. He arranged the funeral with the help of relatives who appeared, as relatives do in such moments, from the various distances of family geography. He managed the details, the temple, the sequence of the ceremonies, the guests, the food. He did this with the focused practicality of a person who understands that grief has logistics, and that attending to the logistics is itself a form of respect. His mother moved through the days after the funeral with the particular quality of a person whose organizing principle has been removed. She had spent 40 years in relationship with his father, managing his household, managing his moods, feeding him, watching him, understanding him with the specific intimacy of a long marriage. Without him the house felt different in ways that had nothing to do with his physical absence, and everything to do with the absence of the relationship that had structured everything. The narrator stayed. He stayed through the funeral and the week after and the second week. He stayed because his mother needed him, and because there was no particular urgency pulling him elsewhere, and because, if he was honest with himself, he had been staying for so long that leaving required a decision he had not yet made. Then the letter came. It arrived on a morning in February, thick, much thicker than any letter Sensei had sent before. Addressed in Sensei's careful handwriting, postmarked Tokyo. The narrator looked at it for a moment before opening it. He opened it. It began, "By the time you read this, I will probably no longer be in this world." Part 3. Sensei and his testament. What follows is the letter, not a summary of the letter. The letter itself, Sensei's own words, his own account. The whole story he had promised to tell and had chosen, in the end, to tell this way. In writing, sent after the telling was no longer possible. In the narrator's hands, in the house where his father had just died, on a February morning in the country, Sensei wrote, "I have been preparing this for some time. I have written it and rewritten it. I do not know if I have found the right words. I know only that the words I have found are true." He wrote about his childhood, about being orphaned young, about being sent to live with an uncle who managed his inheritance with less care than was owed. He wrote about going to Tokyo to study, about the freedom of the city after the provincial confinement of his childhood, about the particular quality of a young man arriving in a place where no one knows him and finding, for the first time, the possibility of becoming something he had chosen rather than something that had been assigned. He found a room in a house owned by a widow. The widow had a daughter. Her name was Ojosan, the young lady, which was what everyone called her, the name dissolving into the role, the person and the title becoming inseparable in the way they do when someone is young and beautiful in the center of a small world. Sensei loved her immediately, not with the gradual accumulation of feeling that novels usually describe, with the specific clarity of a person who has encountered something true and recognized it before they could reason about it. He saw her and understood that this was the person he wanted to spend his life with, which was a thought so clear and so complete that it required no elaboration. He did not tell her. He was not, at that point, a man who told people things. He was reserved. He was careful. He had learned, in his childhood with the uncle who stole his inheritance, to keep his most important feelings internal, protected from exposure. There was another student at the house. His name was Kei. Kei was Sensei's closest friend, the person he trusted most in the world, the person he had known since before Tokyo, the person whose qualities he admired most unreservedly. Kei was serious. Kei was devoted to an ideal of spiritual and intellectual purity that expressed itself in the specific austerity of a person who has decided that self-discipline is the highest form of respect for one's own potential. He ate little. He slept little. He studied constantly. He suffered voluntarily because he believed that suffering sharpened the soul. Sensei brought Kei to live in the widow's house. He brought him there because Kei needed somewhere to live and because he trusted Kei completely, and because it did not, at the time, occur to him that bringing the person he trusted most into the situation that mattered most was anything other than natural. Kei fell in love with Ojosan. Sensei discovered this when Kei told him. Kei told him in the specific way of a man who has been fighting something, and has decided, finally, that honesty about the fight is the only way to continue it with integrity. He said, I have feelings for Ojosan that I cannot reconcile with my ideals. I am telling you because I tell you everything. Sensei listened. He felt, in the moment of listening, the specific experience of a person who has just understood something that rearranges everything they thought they knew about their situation. Kei loved Ojosan. Sensei loved Ojosan. Kei did not know that Sensei loved her, had no reason to know, because Sensei had never said it to anyone. Sensei said nothing about his own feelings. He said, instead, what do you mean by feelings you cannot reconcile with your ideals? You have always said that love is weakness. You have always said that a person committed to the path of self-cultivation cannot afford attachment. He said it with the precision of a man making an argument. He said it knowing that the argument was not wrong, that Kei had in fact said these things, had built an entire philosophy around the necessity of detachment. He used Kei's own words against him, in the guise of helping him think clearly. Kei said, you are right. I am weak. I am not the person I thought I was. He said it quietly, with the expression of someone who has heard a verdict they cannot appeal. Sensei went to the widow. He asked for Ojosan's hand. He did this without telling Kei. He did it quickly, in the specific urgency of a person who has decided, and is acting before they can reconsider. He did not examine his motives carefully because examining them would have required him to see what he was doing clearly, and what he was doing clearly was using his knowledge of Kei's feelings and Kei's philosophy to defeat a rival without telling the rival there was a competition. The widow said yes. Ojosan said yes. Kei found out. Sensei did not tell him directly. Kei learned about the engagement through the ordinary communication of the household. It became known, and Kei came to know it. And Sensei saw in Kei's face the moment of knowing. He did not apologize. He did not explain. He told himself, in the way that people tell themselves things when they have done something they cannot quite face, that he had not done anything wrong, that he had simply pursued the person he loved, that there was no obligation to inform Kei of his own feelings, that Kei's discovery was painful, but not his fault. Kei did not say anything. He was quiet for a few days, quieter than usual, which was saying something for a man who was already quiet. He ate less than usual. He slept in his room rather than studying in the common space. One morning he did not come out of his room. Sensei went to check on him. Kei had killed himself in the night. He had done it neatly, in the specific way of a man who was, even in this, disciplined. He had left no note that explained anything. There was only the fact of it. Sensei lived with this for the rest of his life. He married Ojosan. They had been engaged, and the engagement proceeded, and they built a life together that was, from the outside, ordinary and unremarkable. She was a good wife. He was a careful husband. The life was, in its dailiness, entirely fine. Inside it he carried Kei. He carried the knowledge of what he had done, which was not. He had spent decades establishing, technically wrong in any codifiable sense. He had not lied. He had not cheated. He had competed for a woman he loved and won. The methods he had used were sharp but not dishonest. But Kei was dead. And Kei was dead in a specific way, that had a specific cause, and the cause had a specific name. Sensei had stopped trusting himself after Kei died. He had stopped engaging with the world in the full way he had engaged before, because full engagement required the kind of trust in your own judgment that he had lost. He had retreated into the books, into the long walks to the cemetery, into the careful, limited life of a man who has decided that the safest way to avoid doing harm is to do as little as possible. He wrote, I have been dead for a long time already. I am simply making it official. He wrote, do not grieve for me more than is necessary. Grieve for Kei, if you can. He deserved better than he got, from the world and from me. He wrote, you have been kind to me, kinder than I deserved. I am grateful. The letter ended. The narrator sat in the house where his father had just died, holding the letter, and understood several things simultaneously, about Sensei, about Kei, about what had been happening in Tokyo while he had been here, about the door that had been closing, and that was now, finally, closed. He did not know what to do with what he had read. He sat for a long time. Then he stood up. He went to tell his mother he had to go to Tokyo. Chapter Transition. You have reached the end of Kokoro, by Natsume Soseki. The novel has no epilogue. It ends where it ends, with the narrator standing up and going to tell his mother he has to go, carrying everything Sensei has told him toward a city where Sensei is no longer. Whether he arrives in time, whether there is anything to arrive for, Soseki does not say. The letter is the ending. The understanding is the ending. The standing up is the ending. Kokoro means heart. It means mind. It means soul. It is the word for the thing that connects all three. The interior life that cannot be fully shown to another person, and that, when it is shown, changes everything. Thank you for listening to Kokoro with Around the World Lit Audio. The complete series, all episodes, from week 1 through week 7, is available on this channel. Subscribe so you never miss a new series. A new episode of our other books arrives every week.